So here's the thing about AI. I use AI almost daily at this point. And I think there are some questions and conversations that we're not having about it. AI isn't only having a economic impact on society, it's having a social impact. Every technological change has some kind of social trade-off. And so we're seeing the same thing happening with AI. And it's absolutely correct that this new emergence of AI in the form of Chat GTP and Claude and Claw and all these sorts of things are newer versions of technology that's been around for a very long time. For example, we've had Grammarly, we've had chat info boxes on websites, even the website design themselves, right? The internet itself, to a certain extent, there's always been a component of artificial intelligence embedded in technology, essentially. But with, this current iteration, it's massive. Its impact is huge and noticeable, and people are really fearful. And it is the same sort of social tension that was going on in the early days of the internet. People are really worried about that, or even cell phones, moving from landlines to cell phones. Any shift or change in a society makes people nervous. It produces resistance. Those are things that can be noticed throughout the trajectory of history. However, you can't deny the impact that industry and technology and scientific innovation has had on the natural environment and the ways that it's impacted human beings, right? If we just think about human behavior. What's happening with AI technology today is with, this massive, very impactful, far-reaching, expansive version of artificial intelligence that we have today, is that it's changing our social values a bit in our society. Not removing them, but changing them, but altering them. Different things are starting to be important. Speed, prompting, those sorts of things associated with this technology become things that are rewarded in society. And I think that's very, very important to reflect on what that means, long term, changes and shifts in values and how that ends up being institutionalized. That ends up being a part of the function of our institutions in society as well. And we can think about any major change that's happened over the course of history, whether it's the abolition of slavery or voting rights or racial integration. All those sorts of things were huge, and they had an impact that stretched across all the major structures of society, right? And so we need to talk about AI in that same context, that obviously there's an economic relevance. There's a huge economic piece to interest behind AI and what's rolled out and what's pulled back and all those sorts of things. But it's also political, and there's also a lot of social pieces that we just are not talking, enough about, in my opinion. So that's what I'm here for, as your sociologist here on YouTube, to discuss the things that people just, aren't saying. Not because they don't want to, but because they're not things that they think about, right? So what else am I thinking about regarding this AI paradox? I'm thinking about what we are giving up for convenience. As someone building a business and someone who is an author selling books, I feel like I need to have some sort of online presence. And what that's ended up being for me is activity across 5 different social platforms, including a stand store. So it's a lot of content creation. It's a lot of time and energy that I put into, my posts every week, trying to stay present and consistent and also provide value. For me, as an educator and as someone who's building a business based in education and research, essentially, it's really important that I provide value and not just like, here's what I'm doing today. That's not the kind of post that I, usually share on social media, even though there is some of the like daily life stuff, but it's not like, oh yeah, here's my kid doing this sort of thing. I'm trying to provide information, education, insight, things that are practical and useful for people. So I try to provide a lot of value on my social media platform. So it takes a lot of time to create content. I spend hours and hours, you all, in content creation per week. I think a lot about what I want to say, why, who to who, what I want to post to look like visually, putting together graphics and images. That's another, major piece when it comes to AI. It's a lot of work. And yes, it can be done using other things. People are talking about, why don't you use Canva? Great, wonderful. Canva is incredible. I actually am going to be seeking some assistance from someone who is an expert in Canva because I want to produce more images using Canva. But Canva also has AI, technology. All of this stuff is connected. No, Canva isn't ChatGTP though. There are differences. But we do have to understand the common thread, between these things as well. So what would those alternatives be for me? Clip art in Word, using Canva, like things that I do and want to continue experimenting with and using, but I can't do that all the time. I wouldn't be able to post across 5 social platforms. Do I need to do that? Just post across 1, Evelyn. Don't post across 5. No, I'm on 5 and I want to post across 5. That's what I personally want to do. And I feel like I can actually do that in a way that makes sense for my life and everything. So, we all make our different choices. But for me, this is what makes sense for me and what works for me. So using AI technology really speeds up that process quite a bit, but it's really difficult. I paid a few months ago to have professional photos taken, and I'll always pay real photographers to take photos of me or things, for content online. And I always hire graphic designers. I'm paying someone to build my website. There's a person I'm paying over $1,000 to build my my website. So for me, that's one way that I reconcile some of this tension, is that I decide, okay, what for me, not you, not the world, for me, what makes most sense morally, ethically, that I can actually do and fulfill, every day in my life with ease, etc. Okay. So, that's kind of what it is. I'm trying to balance the use of AI and the, real people, contributions. And I'm doing a pretty good job of that, I think. But it's hard. And I see the posts from my photographer friends and graphic designer friends talking about the impact that AI is having on their jobs and the concerns that they have about their work and theft. I resonate with it. I hate that for them. That's the paradox. That is the paradox. What do you all think about this? What's kind of your biggest concern about AI right now? What is another question? What is a tension that you're struggling with? You know, what's something that you have to consider every time, you know, this conversation comes up or AI comes up, you know, as far as using it or not? Are we becoming less patient, less able to struggle through ideas and go through trial and error? Is it making us less likely to do those sorts of things? And I think that there's so much to this, and that's why there's going to be several videos on AI. There's already like 3, I think, that I've made on this channel already. But this is always going to be a conversation socially. It's something that we have to discuss, right, as a channel that talks about things happening in the world. So one thing that I want to point out now that I might make a fuller video on later is identity variables in AI. Different impacts that AI have by age, I think, is really, really important. And I know that, you know, there are people that have talked about this and are working on this and all that, but that's something that I want to analyze from my own lens. Because there is something to, you know, a younger person that's 8 years old or 9 years old, figuring out how to write a paragraph that describes something that they want someone to see or something, yeah, a descriptive paragraph. They should learn how to do that without any use of technology. Now they have the option of just going to ChatGPT and saying, okay, I need to write a descriptive paragraph for XYZ, and they can just get that output. I have a problem with that. You know, I have a 12-year-old, I have a 16-year-old, and it's really important to me that they learn to do things without assistance as much as possible. And of course, that doesn't mean every aspect of their life, because again, assistance and tools have been embedded in so many parts of our lives that it's like difficult to escape. But I want them to practice doing some math without a calculator, write out, you know, a paragraph, summarize something without using any technology. You need to be able to do those things. I think that those are important fundamental skills that humans need to develop. If you are someone that's in your 40s that's had a full career and written textbooks like myself, I don't believe at this point, we can revisit this some years down the line, AI isn't making me dumber and it's not improving my writing either. You know, sometimes it's just helping me frame something or just helping me brainstorm, you know, or something like that. But I've already learned those skills. I've executed them and there's evidence of it. You know what I'm saying? So you can't compare how AI is impacting me to the way that AI may be impacting a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 16-year-old. You know what I'm saying? So there's like all of these different variables. What about the people that have the resources to have access to technology and buy all these different tools and do all these kinds of things versus people that just can't afford to do it, who may want to, but just can't afford to use those things? Different levels of education and understanding about how to use AI in the most effective, safe ways. There are definitely wide gaps in in that area. You know what I'm saying? So those are missing pieces to this conversation that I'm going to, you know, attempt to fill in a bit, at least with my contributions on this channel. So let me know what your thoughts are, what your tensions are with AI. And if you like these kinds of conversations where we're examining social phenomena and trying to make sense of everyday life and make sense of the cultural contradictions that we all have to deal with, then you should subscribe to this channel. And I hope to see you in the next video. Peace.